Chapter 21. Shooting the Messenger. Aemond. Did the night treat you well, my prince? Ariel greeted Aemond brightly when she arrived at his solo the following day, dressed in that same mundane grey gown she'd worn when he arrived. You weren't in a great hall to break your fast, though you were hardly the only one absent. Quite a few spent the morning suffering for last evening's indulgences. I controlled my intake, but slept rather dismally and broke my fast here instead. I'll be glad when we're back south, Aemond admitted. Did your health take a turn for the worse? She asked, concerned. It had, though whenever he hadn't been coughing, spiraling thoughts kept him tossing and turning instead. At least come morning his worst ailments were a runny nose and a dull throbbing in his head. I'm fine. Please sit down, Lady Ariel. There's tea. Thank you, Ariel said. The table was situated in front of the fireplace, with two holstered benches on each side, and Ariel sat down opposite him. What's the matter? Ariel wondered. Why did you summon me? Aemond looked over at the servant who brought in the tea tray, and the guard, who were still in his chambers. Clear the room, he ordered, glancing towards the door and expecting them to follow suit. The servant went immediately, but the guard, Osric, hesitated. I'll be in the hall, Prince Aemond, if you need anything. Aemond sighed. I doubt it. Ariel looked at him bemused. Am I in trouble, my prince? She teased, as if Aemond wasn't the prince who outranked her. As if he didn't outrank everyone within this castle, including its new lord. Though she always did that, acting with similar grace regardless if she talked to a high lord or a kitchen wench. Ariel had a kind heart, and it made her very popular amongst the small folk and staff at Dragonstone. But it had its time and place, otherwise it just became disrespectful. Do you believe you are? Her smile slipped away. No, she said, arcing a brow. You sounded exactly like your sister there. I feel like I'm about to be lectured over some failure in etiquette. Aemond scowled. He did not sound like Rhaenyra. Our time in Winterfell has been rather eventful, but after the concerning observations I've made, I thought it prudent too. He struggled for a proper phrasing. Try to resolve matters. Vhagar, Ariel sighed, and looked back towards the door. Is Hagrid coming too? No, Aemond said displeased. It is not about Vhagar. She'd misunderstood, but even so it reminded him of the failure from the night before. It was Rubius's duty to protect Ariel's honor, but Aemond was appalled by how blasé he'd been. He may have been befuddled by too many cups of ale, despite Aemond telling him to control his intake at that. But that was no excuse for how carelessly Rubius reacted. The giant had seemed more amused than worried when made aware that Kraken Stark had dishonorable intentions towards Ariel. All he'd done was pat Aemond on the shoulder and said, It's a feast. Ariel can dance and have fun if she wants. If you want to dance with her too, you won't get anywhere complaining to me. You need to ask her to dance yourself, lad. As if this was about dancing! Since Rubius was failing his responsibilities to protect Ariel's virtue, Aemond would have to step up instead. It's not? It's not only about Vhagar, Aemond amended. He felt inexplicably tense about this, but did his best to stomp it down. This needed to be done. Ariel was a ward of House Targaryen. Her behavior reflected back on them, and as a prince it was Aemond's duty to handle this situation before she was tricked into a great house's scheme to grab power and be defiled by that northern barbarian. This was for Ariel's safety too. He'd tell Ariel her behavior had not been acceptable, she'd see the error of her ways, they'd leave Winterfell, and this would be over. Then they could tackle the Vhagar issue together when they returned to King's Landing. 7 hells. To think a week ago Aemond's biggest strife was with Boris Baratheon's sly insinuation the broken betrothal between Aegon and Elena was because his sister had been sullied. When Aemond learned who had started those rumors, he'd have their heads on spikes. But all in time. Right now it was another lady's virtue that needed protection. He cleared his voice and changed his speech from common tongue to Valyrian. This is a matter we should keep private though, and considering our eavesdroppers... Aemon gestured to the door. Do you mind if we speak Valyrian? I don't mind, Harald answered in extended Valyrian, but they may understand. With the exception of the Maester, the likelihood of Valyrian speakers in Winterfell are far lower than in the south. She smiled, conceding the point. I understand you felt grateful for how Stark's timely aid while you were in a difficult situation. Aemon started, his tone stilted and awkward. It must have been frightening to be stranded in the north, and their hospitality probably came as a great relief. Harald was looking at him strangely. They've been kind. You have repaid that kindness though. You've supported Cragen Stark's claim by bringing dragons to Winterfell, witnessing his 3 ceremonial oaths, and you've toasted to his health. However, those are not insignificant actions. Those are the sort of actions done between sworn houses, between allies. And though House Stark answers to Targaryen rulership, they are not considered true allies. But the last Lord of Winterfell, Rickon Stark, he swore allegiance to King Viserys, Harald said, confused. Even so, the north is too far away and we have no blood ties to their house, Aemon said. It was Lord Cragen's responsibility to protect you until you could be returned home safely. But the manner in which he has overseen the matter is... He studied his cup, shoulders tense and words a struggle. I do not approve of your behavior during the feast. You've been... As an unwed maiden, you need mind your reputation better. And Cragen Stark is betrothed. Her expression slipped from bewilderment to mortification. Thank the seven she'd caught on. Aemon? What, She stuttered. My behavior? What of it? I did nothing during the feast. What do you even mean? Your situation is already quite strenuous because Ruby has claimed Vhagar. It puts into question his loyalty, but if illicit rumors of you seducing Lord Stark accompanies them, it will make matters far worse. You're risking your alliance with my house and by extension the protection of yourself, Rubius and Norbert. Harald's mouth fell open, her face going red. Excuse me? Seduce? I've done no such thing! Aemon glared. Then why can't I venture further than the hallway before I hear whispers of you two? Continue the way you have and people will get the wrong idea. Pardon, I mean to say, more of a wrong idea. What you've done is enough to fuel the fires of salacious gossip. What the hell do these rumors claim? She demanded. That you're seducing Kraken so he'll break its betrothal to Aranore and become the Lady of Winterfell yourself. What? That's insane! And nothing happened! Harald shook her head, angry and upset. I know, because I doubled the guards on your door, Aemon muttered. That was you? Harald growled. I can take care of myself. It was completely unnecessary. Some men don't let a closed door stop them. Especially not while drunk. Lord Cragen isn't like that. Aemon laughed bitterly. You've known him a week. What do you know of his true nature? Even so, I have magic. I've actually been attacked before, and believe me, those Loraf soldiers regretted ambushing us that night. I can do a lot more now. Someone wanted attention is nothing compared to that. And if it wasn't unwanted? Aemon snarled, the words wrenched from his mouth before he could stop it. I'm not blind! Harald dragged a hand through her hair, messing up the simple Northern braid she'd so quickly adopted. What the hell? This is completely unwarranted. You already know nothing happened, so what is your problem? My problem, he seethed, is that Norbert is a kingly dowry. You do not lack for prospects, and I can't fault Cragen's preferences, but what do you want to come out of his scheme? Do you believe Lord Cragen will break his betrothal with Aranore, spurn a powerful bannerman, incite the displeasure of House Targaryen and risk the safety of the North, all at the beginning of winter? If Stark is willing to risk the stability of the North, then he isn't worthy of being its warden, and if you aid him in making such an idiotic move, then you're not worthy to be its lady. Ariel shot to her feet, furious. He isn't scheming anything, nor am I! Not everyone has secret agendas. Kragan has been courteous and kind to me and been so without expecting anything in return. Because as you already know, he's betrothed! She bit out, walking back and forth in agitation. But regardless, why are you so upset? Since the day I came to Westeros, your family has been pressing the importance of building alliances. It's all the ladies are talking of, every day. Marriage and right suitors and all that. That? You want to know the truth? Fine, yes, I did consider Kragan, but he made it clear he was betrothed, so you can just shut up? Why the hell are you so angry? He is not of low birth. He's the Lord Paramount. He's exactly the sort your family deems a proper match. But he's taken, and I've respected that. You sound like I did something terrible for merely thinking what everyone else does. Because we didn't take you to ward for you to marry a Lord Paramount! Aemon exclaimed, getting to his feet to glare down at her. Her pacing stopped. Oh, is that how it is? Am I the one of too low birth now? Is it the magic? Was it fun in the beginning, but it's getting too witchy for you? Who the hell do you think you are to dictate who I can or cannot marry? I am not of House Targaryen. I'm not of Westeros. We may have lived under the protection of House Targaryen, but we have repaid our debts many times over. Hagrid has hatched 7 dragons for your house. If anything, your house owes us a debt. That was before Rubia stole Vhagar, Aemon snapped. He owes us now, and you're making it worse. How? I haven't even done anything! Ariel shouted. Bloody hell, this is none of your business, Aemon. Really? Explain where we are then. Aemon gestured sharply around the room. I'm here because of it. I am trying to handle the Vhagar situation to protect you. I went flying across the country searching for you. I came north in freezing winter for you. I've been sick overseeing the succession drama and looks out for their plots for you. It's all for you! The tirade came spilling out in a rush, unthinking and angry. It wasn't before they were out he actually stopped and heard what it sounded like. Though it wasn't like that. It wasn't. Was it? Oh. Ariel stared at him from across the table. A small crease on her brow and her mouth slightly ajar. A dawning realization was starting to grow in her expressive eyes. For my house, he amended quickly, face burning and his throat going dry. You're my business on behalf of my house. Aemon could only press onwards, because regardless of his rudely realized awareness, it didn't change the issue. Perhaps he was a tad more invested in Ariel than he'd thought, but what did that change? If anything, it only gave him further incentive. Becoming Rhaenyra's ward wasn't purposeless. You've lived in the same castle as my uncle for years now. Aemon ranted heatedly. Does Daemon strike you as a gracious man? A virtuous knight of honorable character and unshakable morals likely to show mercy? What does that have to do with anything? She asked, her tone between something suspicious and confused. What did you presume his intentions were when he brought you to Westeros? Ariel's eyes were filled with dread. We had Norbert. People were hunting us to get her. Daemon had a dragon too, and then he recognized Hagrid's abilities for the value they were. And you? He could tell she was starting to understand, but didn't like it. I was there. I had magic too. I was a child. You're not a child anymore, Aemon said, and laid the matter out for her. It's not that he wished to scare her, but she was dangerously close to making herself a target, and she didn't seem to comprehend why. Obviously, Ariel needed someone like him in her corner. Do you believe Daemon would approve of this? Do you expect he'll be sympathetic to hear you've considered breaking the alliance he worked to form, Ariel? You can't afford to be willfully ignorant about this anymore. Frankly, I can't believe Rhaenyra let you keep this delusion. Or maybe it never occurred to her you dare consider alternatives. Think it through. Regardless of who you marry, they will get access to dragons, Aemon said fiercely. I know how you feel about the incestuous practices of my house. You've made that clear enough. But it served its purpose besides keeping our Valyrian blood pure. It's prevented situations like you're threatening the realm with right now. Foreigners without true loyalty to the monarchy tempting great houses with the possibility of gaining dragons. I lack true loyalty? The look on Ariel's face was unlike anything he'd seen before. Eamon had seen her scared before Vhagar, seen her burn fearlessly in fire, seen her upset and indignant, but he had little idea what this was. What do you expect will happen if you marry someone like Stark? Maybe they'll behave, at first. Norbert is only one dragon, but what will come to pass in 5 years after Norbert has hatched a clutch of eggs? Or in 20 years when he stands with several dragons? Are you saying that after all the bloody lecturing I've had to put up with from the Septa, Maester and your older sister, I suddenly can't marry because another house will get access to Norbert? What? No! But Ariel spoke right over him. What about the Valarians? Your mother is a Hightower. That's different. Valarians and Targaryens have been intermarrying for hundreds of years, since long before the conquest. I have Valyrian blood myself. As for my mother, she married in, not out. Are you seriously telling me there is no way another house can have dragons without it leading to war? Dragons are the power behind the throne, Ariel, but if the only thing keeping great houses from rebelling is their lack of means, perhaps that should tell you something. The system is not working. If it did, they wouldn't feel the need to rebel. Aemon laughed. Excuse me, you think it'd be out of necessity? It was absurd. With Ariel's many travels spanning seas and continents, her magic, her multilinguistics and mannerisms, Ariel had always appeared so mature and insightful to him. Until she'd say something like that. It was such a contradiction he could do naught but laugh. How could someone so worldly be so ignorant? Was it the magic that gave her those glaring blind spots? After everything, how could she be so naive? Did she not see it? How could she not know? This argument had spiraled into matters he'd assumed Ariel already knew. In a way she did, but she was always aiming just to the side of the mark. Why hadn't Rhaenyra made this clear already? Was it because she did not wish the union? Or because she did and had known Ariel would react like this? There is no man in the realm who doesn't lust for the Iron Throne or absolute power. I can think of several. They lie. He shook his head at her bright-eyed innocence. Either to you or to themselves. So let me make this clear. It may not happen immediately, but if you continue on this path, you will start a war of dragons. You have no allies in this country but us. We are your protection and your support. Don't squander your safety, Ruby's and Norbert's safety, on some Northern savage. Don't you dare call him that! I will call him whatever the hell I please. I'm trying to help you. Helping? Helping? Accusing me of being a treacherous whore as you being helpful. That's only what you'd be known as if you don't cease this foolishness. Don't you get it? You can have a happy future with the right husband. One that won't cause war and strife in the kingdom. But that future will not be spent in Winterfell. Ariel blinked, her anger so bad she was trembling. And who do you presume this right husband would be? A Targaryen? It's the greatest honor to marry into the royal family, Aemon said, deeply offended by her reaction. People would kill for the mere chance to marry into the House of the Dragon. Yet that wasn't part of our agreement, Ariel shouted. You can't just change it without telling us. The agreement was that we provide magic and hatch dragons, while you granted us protection, boarding and freedom from pursuers. That was the agreement. Nowhere did I enter a marriage pact. It is in the agreement, Aemon pressed. You will have all of that and far more as long as you uphold your end and don't run off to the Starks, Lannisters or whatever other house might try to ensnare you to their side. Your agreement starts and dies with us. You have to stay under our protection for the agreement to continue. And you weren't going to remain a child forever. Why does any girl become a ward to a princess? It's to prepare for marriage. To whom exactly? Or is that old news too? She asked, pale and stressed. Was my intended decided long ago without anyone informing me? Not exactly, Aemon said, his heart picking up speed. I'm not marrying Aegon, Ariel spat. For the first time since this conversation started, Eamon smiled. You won't be offered to. She looked so relieved Eamon could have kissed her. Then who? I don't know who will be considered by the time you're 7 and 10. The rest of us don't require an age limit to do our duty, and some of us may be betrothed or married by then. But as of now, it'll be either myself, Daeron, Damon, Luke, or Joffrey. Joffrey? He's free! Ariel laughed at the incredulity. Did you say Damon? He's old! That's... no! It's not as if I wish you to suffer him for husband either. Few do except my father. Did you know the king suggested the match years ago at Driftmark? Damon had just been widowed and you were a maiden flowered. It would have solved the situation right away, but my uncle refused. I'd say you were rather fortunate he didn't want you. He's always gotten a kick out of making matters difficult. Aside from how Rubius Hagrid wouldn't have accepted the marriage on ground of Ariel's age back then, Eamon could see why Damon wouldn't want Ariel for wife either. Marrying Ariel came with certain sacrifices of the political kind. The sort a second son should accept if he was dutiful and honorable. Two terms never used to describe Daemon Targaryen. Ariel came with no armies, gold, ships, lands, and she was a foreigner. So Daemon wouldn't marry her for the same reason Aegon or Jacaerys wouldn't. They all wanted to be king, be it by ambition, birthright, or supposed claims. Ariel was great for the potential future of House Targaryen. Her children would breathe magic into their bloodline again. Great dragon riders unlike any the world had seen since before the fall of the Valyrian Freehold. But that was with the next generation. For now the lords throughout Westeros would be furious if they had to suffer a foreigner as their queen. She was not a wife for quick rewards. She was the long game, because with the right husband, Ariel's children stood every chance of being near the throne. A daughter born and raised in Westeros may one day be queen, but Ariel herself never would. I was 3 and 10. He's older than the Prince of Pentos. He's Baela and Rhaena's father. I'm aware, but it doesn't matter. Daemon won't agree to marry you, or he would have already. If Daemon had serious intentions of marrying Ariel, Aemon couldn't think of anyone better placed to court her. He was the one to bring her to Westeros. They lived in the same castle and Ariel was his daughter's closest friend. He'd had years to start courting her, even if it was unofficial. But despite being free to pursue another wife, it hadn't happened. As if I'd have agreed, Ariel hissed. Who do you think you are? Every lady in the realm would dream of being in your position, and this is how you talk. You'll be honored to marry Prince Daemon. He's older than my father! He's a melodramatic, arrogant brat! He's a Targaryen prince! A dragon rider! It's a grander suitor than you could dream of finding anywhere else in the world! Maybe in this one, Ariel snapped. You forget I'm not of Westeros. And you forget this isn't Britain. If you want to live according to your stupid fairy tale laws, go home to your land where they count. Follow those woolly ideals someplace your naive dreams won't destabilize the realm. This is our land, under our governing, ruled by my father. We've done nothing but treat you with respect and you're acting like an ungrateful, vexing cunt! The fire in the hearth roared, flaring tall and spilling outward so abruptly Aemon nearly fell on his arse. For a brief moment it was as if the fire took the shape of a roaring lion, threatening to leap into the room. 7 hells! The door was jerked open and Aemon turned just in time to see Ariel storm out. Unsure if the lion would spring back out if he moved, Aemon cast a cautionary glance over while it settled back into the confines of the hearth, before deciding to take the long way around the table to get to the door, wrenching it open. Ariel! Ariel, come back here! But Ariel didn't halt, skirts billowing as she marched down the hall. My prince, Osric the guard asked with concern. With a longer gait eating up the distance, Aemon rushed after her, but Ariel was fast for a lady. Hearing him pursue, Ariel finally whirled back around, her expression so thunderous Aemon stopped in his tracks. We're done here! Leave me alone! She stated fiercely and continued on her way. Close the doors! Aemon called over to the guard at the end of the wing, swapping back to common tongue to be understood by the Northerners. The guards hurried to do as ordered, but the door wasn't even halfway closed before Harriel raised her hand and the door was blown back open by an invisible force, clattering with a bang against the stone walls. "Fuck!" the guard shouted, nearly getting his hand trapped in the collision. Harriel reached the staircase and Eamon let her leave, blood boiling with ire. Fine, she could go. Screw her, no woman was worth such beleaguerment. Eamon whirled on the spot, his mood plummeting at the expressions on the witnesses standing around the hall. The fight whirled in his head, trying and failing to place where it all went wrong. What the fuck happened there? It gotten out of hand. Harriel was being infuriatingly impossible and unreasonable. Why did she always have to fight him at every turn? Women were impossible. They'd been a damn fire lion and... Had Eamon just been arguing the benefits of Damon's suit? Had he lost his wits entirely? Are you well, my prince? Can I assist you with anything? Osric sounded as if he hoped for a negative reply. Make sure Lady Harriel remains in her chambers. He bit his lip. She was a stubborn one, wasn't she? Better safe than sorry. And put guards around Noba's lair. Lady Harriel is not to go flying today. The guards of Winterfell went to follow orders, and like the useless bunch of dunderheads they were, proceeded to fail spectacularly. She's gone? Eamon repeated, looking blandly between Kraken's ugly face, Rubius's bushy head, and the small little fellow who acted as a steward of Winterfell. Norbert is still here. Where the hell would she go? Eamon could not have lost Harriel for the second time in 1 week. Absolutely not. We're not positive, my prince. Winterfell is an enormous castle. There's many places to go for privacy, but all the heated chambers have been searched. The places a lady could be expected to be. Harriel is not likely to do anything expected, Eamon muttered and turned to Rubius. What have you? You have ways to find her. The compass doesn't work anymore, Rubius said. She doesn't want to be found. What does that mean? It means she's using magic to be left alone, Rubius answered meaningfully. What were you two arguing about anyway? The whole floor heard you yelling. Eamon inhaled deeply, ignoring the question. Shouldn't you be more concerned? She's not been gone long and we know why. Or you do. Let her calm down. Sometimes it's better to stay clear of the wrath of a witch, Rubius muttered. Less likely to boil that way. Harriel. The thick canopy of the dense cottonwoods of Winterfell acted as a roof from the snowfall, the thick trunks sheltering from the wind. Aided by the heat from a bluebell spell cradled in her open palms, Harriel sat between the roots of an old oak, not far away from the black pool, giving her a view of the weirwood tree on the opposite side of the water. It felt slightly sacrilegious seeking sanctuary here when Harriel didn't believe in their gods. She was nothing but a trespassing stranger. That was becoming a pattern with her, wasn't it? Huddled under her invisibility cloak, no light from the fire reached further than the insides of the silken fabric. With the exception of the traces in the snow, it gave Harriel perfect concealment while spending the day re-evaluating her life. Not for the first time she wished they'd never met Daemon and Caraxes, that they'd declined his offer and never come to Westeros. Another part of her wasn't sure their lives would be better elsewhere, if they'd still have lives at all. The world was harsh and unforgiving. They cut off a hand from a thief and the cock of a rapist and the head of a murderer. There was no mercy. They demanded an eye for an eye. At least that's how the small folk were managed. And the more power one had, the more wiggle room one could get away with. Until one reached the law himself, the king. And aided by dragons, his will stretched far. Complete isolation was near impossible with Norbert. And even if they somehow managed, they depended on help to some capacity. So far Harriel had barely experienced winter, but knew enough to understand a little of why people feared it so much. Because though their magic could get them further than muggles could dream of, it only went so far. She and Haggard could no more eat their magic than a Lannister could eat their gold. Then she remembered it was hardly all bad. There was Bela, Rhaena, Helena, the maid Alisa, the Dragonkeeper Ino, Sir Lenor, her horse Budbo, Jace, Luke, Joffrey, Visenya. Heck, until today she'd even been fond of Aemond. That was before the fight though. Now she was furious and confused. He called her a cunt, acting like a jealous asshole, and then spewed a bunch of utter crap Ariel wished made less sense than it did. Had she been an idiot for not seeing it sooner? How many knew? Did the twins? After the worst of her fury settled, Ariel was simply left feeling vulnerable and alone, like the outsider she always would be. At the sound of rustling, Ariel looked up as yet another person came searching the Godswood. They'd stopped calling her name a while ago, but they kept patrolling sporadically. Sarah had been the first to pass through the forest calling her name. Fennegar she didn't know, but this time a familiar blue-tinted light shimmered between the trees, and Cregan appeared holding aloft a magical pinecone lantern. He didn't call her name, but his head moved from side to side, searching. His gaze moved right past Ariel's location, unable to see through the perfect concealment of her father's cloak. He was the first person to come by whom she wished would notice though. Cregan walked along the poolside until he reached the weirwood tree, where he turned towards the bleeding face carved into the trunk, his back to Ariel across the water. With a tug, Ariel's cloak fell down, the light from her bluebell fire spilling out, though Cregan still didn't notice, probably assuming the light came from his own lantern. I only wanted some quiet. Cregan rolled around so fast Ariel worried she'd slip and tumble into the water. It wasn't frozen, but it was undoubtedly chilly. Ariel! Ariel waved from her little hidey hole. You should have called off the search. The patrollers were unnecessary. Where did you... I didn't see you, but I'm relieved to find you well, my lady. With quick steps, Cregan began walking around the pool. Is this where you've been all day? It's getting dark. We need to head inside. I think it's in everyone's best interest that I remain outside, Ariel griped. The urgent jinx boils all over Aemond's stupid face hadn't receded quite yet. There was also that bad boggy hex from one of Hagrid's old defense books accumulated during the war. Ariel had never had a chance to try it on her target, but Aemond had a cold, so even if she did it halfway, it'd probably have an effect. Cregan jogged the last stretch around the water, reaching Ariel's oak. It'll be supper soon. You're not even wearing a hat, Lady Ariel. You'll get sick, and the prince is concerned for you. The prince can go jump in the pool, Ariel snarled, closing her hand in a fist around the blue fell fire and snuffing it out, just to give a visual demonstration. That's no way to speak of the prince, he said, but with no heat. He actually seemed rather amused. What did the two of you disagree about? You heard about that? The whole floor heard, though none understood much. Ariel tilted her head back, resting it against the trunk. When you agreed to... But she stopped herself there, cheeks heating. No, I mean, it was only things that had been left unexplained. Cregan arched a brow. I see. That clarifies... nothing? She chuckled. What did you mean to say, at first, about what I've agreed to? Ariel hesitated, torn between embarrassment and uncertainty whether she truly wanted an answer. Snow creaked under boots as Cregan moved closer to kneel down in front of her. It struck her that Cregan suited his forest very well. He waited for her to speak, and finally she caved. Did you have a say in your betrothal? She asked. Were you upset? Cregan's eyes widened. I was not upset, he said quietly. Ariel nodded, having a sudden urge to move somewhere with more air. Cregan was bent in front of her, the tree trunk behind her. She was trapped. Why the hell did she ask? That was not what she'd wanted him to answer, as if her day hadn't been terrible already. Ara is a childhood friend. The betrothal seemed a good choice. Cregan continued. Then... That's more than many get, isn't it? She mused. You choose someone you want. Have you been betrothed? Cregan guessed, shifting to make room for his long legs. Is that what your quarrel with Prince Aemond regarded? In a manner of speaking, Ariel muttered. Who? Cregan asked. Who knows? Ariel chuckled bitterly. Perhaps the 3-year-old, perhaps the 40-year-old. As long as they have a dragon, my own preference seems to be the only thing not deliberate regarding the matter. He didn't respond, but frowned and looked down at his feet while Ariel studied the lantern, noticing it was starting to sag. Pushing back from the trunk, Ariel sat up and leaned towards Kraken. The sudden proximity took him off guard and his grey eyes dilated. It reminded her of last night during their dance, when he'd pulled her in close and whispered the secret he never should have uttered in her ear. Be it I could keep you. As giddy as she'd been in the moment, it had been so unfair to say. But maybe they were both being unfair. Maybe both were doing things they shouldn't. I can mend that, Ariel said. Mend? He asked blankly. He blinked and then followed where she was pointing to. What, the lantern? The magic is starting to fade. Wordlessly, Kraken handed it over while Ariel took out her wand. She renewed the spells, making the pine cone sharper, the handle firmer and the bluebell fire brighter. It will last a little longer now. Thank you, he said, but barely glanced at the lantern before focusing on her face. On her lips. Ariel wasn't sure what possessed her. Maybe her only defense was emotional exhaustion, leaving her with little energy for critical thinking. Regardless of why, her heart was beating faster, her nerves tingling. All it took was to lean forwards, tilting her head up, and next Kraken met her kiss fervently in the middle.